Hey there, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. This is Danny,
And this is Jim.
and it is warming up finally around here.
Yes, for Wisconsin.
Yes.
No more average of -14. We
Well,
we broke the above freezing barrier
we
today.
did. It was very exciting.
Yes, it was.
What's been going on?
Well, a lot, and not a lot that I've paid a whole lot of attention to.
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood's still Hollywood. I did see an article though.
Okay.
Casting directors. They have I didn't know this, but they have their own awards.
Oh,
They're,
yeah.
oh yeah, awards for the best casting choices.
Right.
I'll admit I had no idea, but with that, um, at their award ceremony, a lot of people talking to them, interviews and stuff, and there's some real concern about what's going on in Hollywood. Um, it hasn't, it wasn't great before the pandemic,
Right.
and during the pandemic, everything just kind of went to shit. And coming back, um, they're really concerned because some of them are having problems with people. They they don't they don't like the casting process. They're not real thrilled about like folks who show up for choices and the people who get landed into spots.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they feel like it's kind of losing its grip on what it used to be and what it should
Interesting.
be. And we talked about this, not from a casting sense,
Okay.
but from the whole thing of Hollywood is there. I can't pick anybody out who's going to become like a legend or has established themselves as such in like the latest generation. It's just faces. You know, we were talking about 70s, 80s, 90s, early aughts legends. The legends who are still alive today were legends back then,
Right.
and they're just not seeing it. They're not seeing the performances. They're not seeing in auditions or looking for folks. It's faces, basically. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
coming back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I attribute some of it to being a little bit out of touch with the latest generation because I just don't care for some of the things that are put out there. That I'm like, I really don't give a shit about this person and what they're doing. But at the same time, I can see how there would be concern about what's going on.
Well, and I think part of the problem too is indie
Mm-hmm.
is an industry now. Independent film, we need new categories.
We do.
Okay, because there are multi-million dollar independent films out
Yeah.
there, which basically means they've done it without the aid of a studio. Some guy or woman had their money and wrote, directed, or starred in, put the whole thing together without the help of studios and agents and shit.
Right.
Right. So they make their thing, throw it out at a festival, and then everyone lines up and they wait for the biggest check.
Mm-hmm.
We'll distribute it. We'll distribute it. We'll distribute it. Not saying that's wrong, you know, but the folks who are still, have a $500 budget using their phone or some old camcorder, um, it's just hard. So, and I'm going to mention this now because our upcoming movie, not this one, but the one coming next, I had to really dig for because I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about today, spoiler, it's a good film. It's a good
Yes.
film. But I miss finding Failure Boy Productions stuff. I miss finding David's earlier stuff. David Ryan Keith. I miss, the onslaught of Cliff and Marty and Anton and all these folks who you know, they don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget.
Right.
They're not doing this full time. You know, Cliff and Marty got to get up and go to work, just like we do. And they find the time to make these movies. And that's why it takes so long.
Yeah.
You know, David pretty much does all the shit himself still,
Yes.
right? He gets a slightly bigger budget because he's marketed in some,
He's been making some stuff.
yeah, different areas. But I was really jonesing for something, you know,
I get it.
the like,
Something that felt homemade.
well, yeah, yeah, hearts and minds independent.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I think we need to seriously, as a community, we need to come up with a new classification for this, because the multi-million-dollar films,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they have their place. Yes, they're indie films. Yes, they're not restricted to the conventions of a studio oversight, right? But we got, you know, a guy or a woman or a team or a group of people who are like, we want to make this movie. No one's going to buy it, right?
Right.
You know, so we're going to make it. And they do, you know, Zombie with a Shotgun,
Oh, yeah.
right? Where did that begin? YouTube.
Yeah. Web series.
Yeah, because didn't have the money to do a whole motion picture. Wasn't really quite thinking about it, just wanted to get this story done. Luckily, that brought everything in and it came full circle, and, you know, but I mean,
I do. I think in general, the art of film is starting to decline in a way that we maybe weren't anticipating with the influx of so much other kinds of video content.
yes. Well, and technology.
Yeah.
Again, I just read a thing on people using AI in film.
Right.
I have come to this conclusion. Art was never meant to be easy. And I think because we have all this stuff that makes it so, literally a trained monkey who knows how to hit a button and click a mouse or a touchpad, they can come up with something. Shouldn't be that fucking easy. It shouldn't. Art is work, and it's sitting in that chair, pulling it all together, editing, color correcting, sound, you know, this, cut that, fifth of a second, half a second. Where does this go? Maybe this scene goes over here, you know, kind of moving
Sure.
stuff around, right? I don't feel good having all these tools to make it easy. I think that's robbing us of the quality. I think it's why I got into such a funk,
I get that.
because a lot of these movies are like independent film. In the name itself is becoming like Netflix. They're all very formulaic. They're all very the same feel, same look. You know,
Yeah.
I I I just think of the ones that we've watched that have been so good, so much fun, so low in production value.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
because you don't have millions of dollars of equipment, right? It's never an insult,
No,
right?
it isn't.
You know. So yeah, what's coming up for next time is it made me feel a little better,
Sure.
you know.
Although it wasn't a new one.
No, it wasn't new, but it had that right.
It had
It
that homemade
it
feel.
had what I was looking for. And here's the problem. I guess this is what's up. All of these great films that we started doing this with,
Yeah.
right, are so fucking hard to find, or they're just not there.
Yeah.
Right, folks. We have spent hours. At least I have, because
Oh, yeah. I have
doing,
too.
yeah. But when you were doing stuff, I'm like, we got to find something. I was trying to find candidates to show you. So many hours going through this shit, and it's like being in a library full of books, but they're all blank pages. You know
It's
what I mean?
tough.
It's getting a little disconcerting. So I guess that's what's up. Just, you know, it's not. not the most positive thing, but I think it's kind of a PSA. We need to start paying attention to this. I think more
Yeah.
people need to stand up and say, yeah, you can do all this to, cut your editing in half and, special effects in half. And, it's going to take the money down by half for all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. That is not what it has ever been about. I would rather watch a movie that did the best it could within the budget constraints that it had than watch a movie that just went, it's like the whole CGI thing all over again, right? CGI was awesome for the things you couldn't physically do, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, then just pick any Marvel movie and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. Top of the list, CGI. Way too much.
Yeah, I mean, here's the problem when you live in a capitalist society. Money is king.
Yeah,
And
it
so
is.
money's going to drive everything that, that goes around. And unfortunately, within the system that we have, there is no incentive at all to stop that from happening. There's no way to be like, oh, people who make films shouldn't care about money
I get that.
because you need it. I mean, there was a guy on, it's never mind. We don't need to tell that story.
Yeah.
The news is terrible.
Anyway, yeah, I guess that's my thing is I know there's money and stuff involved and everyone wants to make money off their stuff. I mean,
yeah,
there aren't too many creatives throughout history who are like, I'm just going to do this till I literally die of starvation. And I don't want anything for it.
I mean, the system for artistry used to be like you get a patron.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
A patron sponsors an artist. They create these beautiful works. The patron gets their part of the,
mm-hmm.
everything. And that doesn't happen anymore.
No. Well, here's the problem with that system, though. Most of the great artists we talk about all fucking died poor.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't until long after they were dead
that their works became worth money.
Yeah, priceless.
Yeah.
So I see the fault in that.
Yeah.
I get it. I just miss it. And I know before anyone decides to write in, there's this platform, that platform. I don't have the time. I don't have the fucking time. I don't want to subscribe to 40 different platforms that have this kind, and this kind of different type of, indie film or shorts and stuff. That to me is the problem. That is the problem. Like I said, Tubi, I thought was like a godsend, the gift to the indie filmmaker. And they have an indie film section, and stuff that's not in there does show up occasionally, and like horror especially. We've talked about indie horror is like the easiest thing to do. I don't know. I just want more. I want to see what's out there more. So if you know something out there, B-siders, send it in. I don't give a shit if it's 30 years old. Bring it to us.
Yeah.
Because, we do B movies, but I really want to just get those passion projects, blood, sweat, and tears films in front of my face.
Yeah.
And bring them out through here. So maybe it is 20 years old. If it's out there, someone's getting something for it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel bad bringing this 20-year-old 2 nickels and a half a dime, because he couldn't even get a full dime.
That's right.
Right. Budget, and just worked the fuck out of it. And you can see it in every frame. Sound might be shit, lighting might be goofy, thing might be shaking because it's like, well, we had a tripod, but then something happened. So we like you do in indie film, you wing it. I would rather sit and watch that, take notes, and push it out and have people realize it now. And, some sort of redemption for the creator that, finally getting the love.
Something for it.
Yeah. Plus they're just fun as shit, Well, before we dive into this thing, since I've already told people to reach out to us,
go to our website, lordsofmisruleproductions.com.
Everything's on there. All the links to all the places to do the things, folks. Patreon links, YouTube links, another two Patreon links, a YouTube link, podcast, obviously, podcast page there, if that's where you listen to your stuff.
Our emails, socials, etc., etc.
Yes. Do the things. Do all the things.
Yeah.
Sign up for Patreon. Go ahead. Like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever it asks for. Do it, please.
Tell us about this movie.
All right. So, this episode, we are covering the movie Monolith, done in 2020, directed by Matt Vesely, written by Lucy Campbell, starring Lily Sullivan, Ling Cooper Tang, and Ansia Nathan. It is rated R. Did find a budget. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
Estimated $640,000. We'll talk about that. And the logline is a headstrong journalist whose investigative podcast uncovers a strange artifact, an alien conspiracy, and the lies at the heart of her own story.
Sure.
I think that's that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I got a lot to talk about, so let's get through this thing.
All right.
You gonna take us away?
Let's dive in. So we start hearing someone talking about their mother being followed her whole life. We don't have any video at this moment. It's just audio. They caught someone with a camera watching them. When they tried to confront him, he jumped in front of a car. The camera had thousands of photos of them and their family over the years. And so it's someone telling this story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a woman interviewing him. She asks if he can send her the photos, but he says the camera disappeared somehow. And it's very clear that she thinks he's kind of crazy. And then, we kind of see her then, and he starts talking about how she screwed up her last job so badly. And so she hangs up on him, the interviewer. And then she says, we hear her say, I'm going to tell you a story. All you have to do is listen. Then she is talking about how she failed in her last job as a journalist by not checking a source's background.
Mm-hmm.
She was investigating this guy named Langley. And he was cleared of any crimes. And then we see her, she's warming up on a mic. And then she is running a podcast about unbelievable events. I think I didn't write what it's called, but I think it's called like Beyond Belief or something.
Yeah, I didn't write it down either.
And she's got some voicemails from the guy who's producing her podcast. And they're like increasingly angry about her delivering the first episode.
Yeah.
So she gets this email that just says Flora May and the Brick and a phone number. Or Flora May King and the Brick.
Well, the subject line was "The truth will out."
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's a photo, presumably of Flora May.
Mm-hmm.
So she calls the number. A woman answers, and the journalist asks this woman about the email. And Flora May is like pretty reluctant to talk about it. She says it changed her life in a bad way. So this is something that happened like 20 years ago. She was a housekeeper for a wealthy family. It was all great until something weird happened in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Where the furniture was all like clawed up. And the way she describes it, it sounds like a bear got into the house and just like destroyed everything.
Yeah, furniture was cut up and everything was just... I mean, that was the presumption because
right.
Not a lot of detail.
Right. And the family ended up blaming Flora May's daughter, Paula, who never admitted to doing it. Flora May didn't stick up for Paula. And then she got this black brick, she says.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't remember how she received it, she says. It was just there.
Right.
So it was dark and heavy, and she says it was special. But the child of the wealthy family wanted it or took it.
Yeah.
And then the father ended up selling it as an art piece to pay for the damage to the furniture.
Right.
She vaguely remembers the name of the art collector because the journalist wants to follow this thread. And then the family fired her after all this happened.
Mm-hmm.
She says the brick made her feel power and that there was something like unfinished. But she says it was probably all in her head. You know, she's kind of like, I know you think I'm probably crazy. This is weird. But then her daughter, Paula, gets on the phone and says that her mom doesn't need any more crap. Stop trying to sell something to her.
Right.
And hangs up.
I know. Okay. The thing is that it didn't need any kind of like segue or anything.
Nope.
It's just so real. The amount of fucking phone calls, even with all the spam text and emails, brutal, endless landline calls.
I know.
You know,
our number is unlisted.
I know. It's a brand new number, unlisted. We never gave it to anyone. It's our emergency in case everything goes out. Landlines will always work.
Right.
Yeah.
But we still get calls on it.
Yeah, we do. Political calls.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't even know what else because Lily answers the phone with some banging.
She knows she can answer that phone and just do whatever kind of prank she wants to.
I know. The morgue things, the this and that.
But even she's getting kind of tired of doing that.
I don't think she thought it would be that much.
I know. The last time it rang, she just hung up. She just picked it up and hung it right back up.
So some reality there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the journalist parents are calling her about their vacation. They mention an Ian whose cage needs to be cleaned regularly. So this journalist is staying at her parents' house doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful house. Huge, very, minimalist, I don't know, sort of magazine looking.
Well,
it's a wealthy house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we see a turtle, which must be Ian. It's like a snake neck turtle.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cute. And then the journalist is calling the art gallery who might have bought the brick. And the guy says that he never thought he would get a call about these. And he is like affable. He's happy to talk to her. It's a totally different vibe than Flora May. And he says that he has several bricks. He has been interested in them for a long time. He received his own when he was younger. And he knows of at least a dozen. Says he has a few.
Mm-hmm.
And that each one is unique. They're black, heavy. They're not man-made, but they're not natural. And he brought some to a friend of his to be volumetrically scanned. And what was interesting is the scans were full of symbols.
Yes. They were. So the inside, it was like these symbols and they were like folded over.
Yeah.
Like there's layers in. Like the thing's made of layers and they're folded over each other.
Right.
Kind of thing.
And he says that he'll look for the scans to send to her. And she's a pretty good interviewer, actually. I just want to point that out. She asks really good questions. To the point where in my notes, I'm just talking about what he's saying because she's just getting this out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he says the symbols aren't any language, but each one has its own unique symbols. They're similar.
Right.
In style.
Yeah.
But he said it's like his brick speaks directly to him. Like he recognizes some of the symbols in there
mm-hmm.
and they mean something specific to him.
Right.
So just before he got the brick, he tells her that he had a vision of a creature appearing in his bathroom. And he says this creature was his brother, and it was like grotesque and weird. But his brother had died as a teenager. And the creature told him that a part of him wanted his brother to die.
Yeah.
And he tells this journalist that it was true. And it was after that he received the brick. And he says that in his heart it felt real, this vision,
Mm-hmm.
and it still haunts him. And she, at this point, is, trying to get a little more out of him, because while he's being like talkative and friendly, it's clear that there are some things that he is not talking about.
Right.
So he applauds her for being skeptical, but he insists that the bricks are alien. And then he says that he'll sell her one.
Yeah.
And she asked if he knew the brick was stolen that he bought from the family.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that there's a lot of art that's stolen. And then he ends the call.
Yeah.
So later she's talking to her friend Scott on the phone. And I just want to say again, this journalist, she's the only person visually that we have seen the whole film.
Yeah. We probably should have said that from the beginning. So
yeah.
This is one person,
Mm-hmm.
one location.
Yeah.
Which is the house. And she's primarily in 3 different locations in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We don't see any of these other people. We see the photo. There will be some like video clips, but
Right.
there is not one other person who is primarily on screen.
Correct. So later, the journalist is talking to her friend Scott about how bad she thinks this podcast is going to be, because all she has is this brick stuff. And they chat for a bit, and then Scott sort of gently suggests that maybe she needs a break.
Yeah.
And she says that she can't hide away like she's done something wrong. She starts defending the Langley article. And she explains that she's gone back to her parents' house for a bit, but she's kind of stuck because she tried to do the right thing and got humiliated for it. So she wants to make a story that will make people listen.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, outside of her flat are camped other journalists and people who just want to deride her. And
yeah, this guy was a huge public figure, and she, had this gaffe.
Yeah.
That undid what I'm guessing is probably years of work on her part.
Which is all it takes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we see her doing some editing, listening to bits of the phone calls, putting together the podcast. She cuts down Flora May's call to make her sound a little more crazy.
Yeah, like a little more bite to it, a little more interest.
A little juicier.
Yeah, whole swaths of the conversation she cut down.
And then she's talking about how frightening the stories are. She's doing this sort of like narration overview. What do the bricks want from people? Does anyone out there know anything about these bricks? And then she's able to send that draft to her producer, and she gets an email back like, this is book wild to me, almost immediately, saying that the podcast is going to be published today. I'm like, there's no way he listened to it even.
No. So, yeah. So you call her the journalist.
Mm-hmm.
I called her mostly she, and then the interviewer. She's interviewing.
I mean, yeah, she is the interviewer.
But I will, before I begin, I will do my best effort to inline translate and replace whatever I have with the journalist, so we can stay
consistent
on par. Because this is one, if the name came up in the beginning, we both missed it,
right?
Both times.
Yeah.
Because this is one that we did watch twice, once through and then once for notes. So she just got assigned a name. I mean, that happens.
But then in the credits, she's listed, I believe, as interviewer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if...
I don't think she has a name.
Yeah. Well, okay. So then we get a voiceover of her doing her podcast recording.
Mm-hmm.
once this is all done. That was just before it's going to be done, going out now,
Right.
right? Um, so she sends that finished episode to Tyler, is the unknown dude with all the
The
power.
producer.
Yeah. So during the transition of all this going on, we hear some weird rumbling,
Yeah.
like kind of thing. And then the whisper of a kid saying, "Happy birthday." Very,
I don't even know if I caught that.
very faint. Just like, I don't even know if that'll pick up, but we'll see. Um, so then we see her eating lunch, and she gets a text. Her podcast is blowing up.
Yeah.
Tons of people are responding to her. And then we hear a woman's story about her brick, and she gets visions. They feel violent and invasive, hard to tell them apart from reality. Um, she knows that she's having this vision because there's this rancid meat smell when it happens. And whatever it is compels her to walk out of a window at work. And then she wakes up as she hits the ground. Um, that was something.
Yeah.
So while it's happening, apparently, she's acting normal to other folks. So she's seeing
Right.
all this shit, but while it's going on, she's not just like sitting there spaced out. She's actually having fucking conversations and doing her job.
Yeah.
It's this whole bifurcation of delusion and like autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really weird. Um, and when that all happened, then her brick arrived. She agrees to send the photograph to the journalist. And when asked if she's thought of smashing it or getting rid of it, a feeling hits her that she needs to listen.
Because it's trying to tell her something.
Yes. She says it feels like something awful is coming. And when asked how she received it, the woman won't talk about it. It was just there. That's all. Woman ends the call.
Mm-hmm.
When have we got that before?
So yeah, this is 3 people so far who, when asked how they got the brick,
Done.
are not like, it showed up in a box on my doorstep, or like,
Yeah.
They make it sound like it just appeared.
Right. Or it called to me kind
Right.
of thing. It just, there it was. So then we hear Flora Mae's voice, and she heard the podcast. She is mad that her words were changed around. And then we have a small montage of other callers, none of which are happy. As this is going on, the large windows where the journalist is doing her work, and I mean large windows, it's floor to ceiling. This is like a 15, 20 foot tall ceiling.
It's high.
This is a, I don't even know what like postmodern. I don't know what the fuck you call it.
It's like a full wall of windows.
Yeah, but this house is very unique,
Mm-hmm.
very blocky, but it is beautiful. So she's by these big windows. Then what we see is they're starting to get covered with papers and posties.
Yeah, of her research, her,
Yeah, postie notes.
crazy
she sticks
board
it up there. She's got things printed out. Yep, crazy board.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking pretty cool. So then the journalist is on the phone with another man. Says that she needs to hear the story, but won't record. The guy talks about his grandfather having visions. Had a son with another woman. Later sees her at the mall. Or he had a son with another woman. He saw that woman at the mall. The little boy looked at him like a stranger. Then they were never seen again. The guy found his grandfather sitting alone, staring at a chair, saying sorry over and over. He believed it was his son haunting him.
Right.
Right? And then it stopped. The brick is gone. And he feels that his grandfather has now changed, but replaced by something else. He says something different.
Yeah.
And He said there's no soul in his eyes. Now his father is getting visions, or so that was his grandfather. Now his father is getting visions and getting sick. The guy is afraid a brick's going to show up for his dad.
Right.
The guy repeatedly tells her she needs to stop the podcast. Later, she's doing research, the journalist. We see bits of an article talking about a British government study on a mysterious illness, which has all of the symptoms that she's been hearing about from people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was like in the 80s.
Yeah, this was in the 80s. So she's having trouble getting Ian to eat his food.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dropping fruit and stuff in there, and he's just not having it. And then we see lots of great reviews on her podcast. She's outside having a cigarette, and we hear that rumbling sound again.
Yeah.
And then she looks sad suddenly. Message pops up on her phone, and the images of the 3D scan were sent.
Right. The art collectors did send them over.
Yes. So later she's on the phone, leaving a message for someone at MIT, which turns out to be Scott, to look at the scans. And then as she's looking at them on the laptop, we see symbols. We see what he's talking about.
Right.
Right. Which was pretty cool. And then there's this interesting cut. It's a long shot of the house with a giant brick over it.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Monolith from 2001 and 2010. But not smooth.
Right. It's
Kinda,
sort of organic looking.
Yeah, it's like a weird rough mold kind of thing, but massive. And then it just kind of like fades away.
Yeah, it kind of gets slowly covered by clouds.
Yeah, over throughout the shot. So later she is on the phone with Scott, and he has no idea what he's looking at.
Yeah, he says he doesn't recognize the language. It's unique.
Yeah. And he's not even sure that they're real.
Right.
The scans, right? Because he's just never seen anything like this ever before. So the journalist believes all of the people she talked to have had some kind of experience related to the government study, and each scan is different in that the symbols are different.
Right.
Right. So she thinks that the symbols are related to the person who received the brick.
Correct.
Right. And that's kind of what we've been hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like they're very personal.
Yes. And then Scott says no university is going to touch this without verification.
He's basically laughing at her.
I mean, well, it's right here. He says that he's concerned that she's making the same mistake she made before by not objectively fact checking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brought her down. She hated the guy who she was covering, and someone said, hey, they got news on him, and she published it, and he somehow got off on his crimes, and she looked like a really bad journalist, because that's
right.
That's the kiss of death. I mean, it is, right? Facts, facts, facts. You have to disassociate.
Oh, yeah.
The story is the story. That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to feel about it. You have to know about it.
Right.
So, I mean, that makes sense. And then Scott asks the journalist if she really believes it or if she wants to believe it. Right?
Yeah.
And she's pissy about it, but I get where he's coming from, but I don't, it wasn't to be argumentative. It wasn't to be like, put her in place.
Right. He does seem like he's trying to help.
Yeah. It was, this, you may have forgotten from yesterday, but this happened before.
Right.
And he's just being a good friend. I'm seeing the same things that you did back then.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just trying to watch out for her, So later, she is in the shower and we hear that rumbling again. And this time it sounds like faint voices as well. Just and I couldn't make them out, really. But then we hear the doorbell. So she's got to get all done up, goes out to the door. There's nobody there. Now, I wrote in my notes, understand the entire wall is glass, and this massive house is on a large piece of land. There's just not a lot that you can't see,
Right?
right? Um, and then she looks down, and at her feet on the ground, well, just past the door, is a box.
Mm-hmm.
She takes it in, opens it up. Lots of paper shreds.
I thought there might be a brick in this box.
Right? Well, I did too. But then, and you could tell it was packed by someone who is a fan of Amazon because it's this big fucking box. And what's in it? A flash drive.
Yep.
So she puts it in, brings up the video, and it's a video of a little girl's birthday party. The girl in the video has turned 9. In it, the dad asks what she got for her birthday. She starts listing some things off and then ends with a black brick.
Mm-hmm.
Dad's a little surprised.
Yeah.
But then we learn the girl in the video is the journalist.
Yeah, it's her as
it's
a young
her
girl.
9th birthday party. She leaves a message for her dad and she wants to talk about this. And then she's watching the video, distressed, and notices there are marks on the paper shreds
that were used to stuff the box.
Yeah. So when I say paper shreds, I mean like the I'll call them the cheap shredders where you drop the paper in and it just cuts them into long.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a multi-cross cut down here that
I do.
Turns them into itty bitty confetti.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts piecing them together and they make a drawing of one of the symbols from the scans on the files that she got.
Yeah.
Right?
And this symbol, it seems to mean something to her.
Yeah. So then she calls Mr. Lang, who is the art dealer from earlier, asking if he's fucking with her.
Right.
Fair. Very fair. He's insisting he's done nothing. She asks if the bricks are real. Yes. She asks, how do you know if you're having one of the visions? He really doesn't know. I like this. And this, I don't want to wait till we're done. Mm-hmm. Up to this point, I have really enjoyed, this is good writing, good direction, good acting, everything coming together on this fine point where when there's somebody not physically present in the room, it's difficult to get the tone.
Right.
Right. We've had a bunch of stuff over the pandemic that came out, one person, one location, trying to do voiceovers to match the phone calls and stuff. There's always like, it's just a little off.
Yeah.
Right. This is really good. And I liked the economy of character here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's a straightforward dude. He's just answering questions.
Yeah.
So then she wants him to show her the brick to prove they are real. Says he's with his grandkids at a playground. She threatens to call the cops on him about his art deals.
Yeah, about stolen artwork.
Yeah, she's getting real shitty. And then he says, give him 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Then she goes to the door and scouts out if anyone is out there. And shouts.
Yeah.
I'm not scared.
Like, okay.
I thought, clearly, and it made me chuckle a little bit inside because it reminded me of an episode of Mark Maron where he's on Maron, where he's talking and talking about how he's reading all these psychology self-help books, and Patton Oswalt is his guest. He's like, so how's that going? He's like, I'm okay. He goes, yeah, because that's the guy I want to believe is okay, is the guy standing in the middle of the street fucking shouting, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah, so I'm not scared. Okay. So
right.
Then she's making food in the microwave. And then she gets sick. Like right there.
Yeah,
and just starts puking in the sink.
Not able to eat.
Right? She tries feeding Ian again. He's not interested.
Right.
Then she's sitting nervously waiting. And then finally the phone rings, and it's Mr. Lang, and he's video calling from his vault. And right away we see several bricks. And then as he starts moving a little bit, there's dozens.
Yeah. He said he had a few.
Yeah. And
but there's so many.
There's so many. And then he says his brother is there. He can sense him.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see much on the video after that other than Mr. Lang's feet. It's like he put his phone down. He's dealing with something.
Yeah.
There's some scratching sounds. There's a shout. And then there's some crunching sounds, which are always magnificent audio only when you don't see what's going on.
Yeah.
I love that. And then there's a yelp. Something inaudible, some more weird sounds, calls over. She tries to call back. The number is unavailable.
And she is freaked out.
Yeah.
She immediately goes back to editing and recording, saying she believes her life is in danger. And she says she has to continue to find the truth.
Yes.
So it seems like maybe she sort of remembers her brick, the one she got when she was 9. She gets a call from Shiloh, the scans guy. Right?
Scott?
Yeah.
He's the one looking at the scans.
No, it's the other journalist, Shiloh, who wrote about the sickness in the 80s.
Yeah, she wrote the article of the sickness from the 80s. Yes.
So that's Shiloh. So Shiloh's been listening to the podcast, and she says she doesn't know how much it'll help, but doesn't have a problem sharing, because the journalist reached out to her.
Mm-hmm.
She said at the time her paper would kill for any Cold War scoop. And she got the info about the unexplained objects, and they were hot and hard for the Russians. They were saying the Russians are doing these.
It had a very Russian slant in the end of the article. Yeah.
Yeah. So the study said 70% of people only got it because they heard it from someone else, this disease or this sickness.
Yeah. Not actually having had a brick.
Right. Yeah. But she lost the memo that was written about it.
Right. But she called it a viral disease that travels by sound.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to pause for a second because it was only episode before last, Pontypool.
Yeah.
And I thought this was interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
She said her friend, who was her source, got posted to some faraway place. Yeah. So all her info kind of dried up.
Yeah, lost touch and all that.
She said she heard later that he got sick too. And then they lost touch. So yeah, a viral disease that spreads by word of mouth. She said she didn't think of much of it then, but after listening to the podcast, she does think it's pretty compelling. But she says that if her article and the podcast are about the same thing, then maybe the journalist shouldn't be publishing about it. Because if it spreads through word of mouth, then that is not good. So the journalist is pretty troubled. This house that she's in is pretty remote.
Yes.
And she is outside kind of listening to a voicemail about how well the podcast is doing. But our journalist seems to be losing herself a little bit. And so she's talking to her friend Scott about it. And he says that she sounded kind of messed up in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
He's worried about her. And she says that she's not going to stop. There's something going on, and this is going to be career defining for her.
Yes.
And then she just starts attacking Scott for not being supportive. And he asks if there's someone with a grudge trying to mess with her.
And also, visually, she looks like she's been through it.
Yeah.
I mean, she looked to me like someone who's had a bad run of the flu.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Circles under the eyes. When you keep throwing up,
she's not sleeping. She's not eating. Gaunt, yeah.
Just a little bit. But yeah, this has been days of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she goes back to that first email that she got. And she's found that that subject, the truth will out, is a Shakespeare quote. So she's looking through, books, and she finds Flora May King's initials in the Shakespeare book in her house.
Merchant of Venice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then she's looking at that birthday party video, and young her mentions a brick. And then we see this young black girl taking photos of the party through like the door window.
I thought it was a mirror, and she was the one filming.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So then she's calling Flora May and asking what she's doing. Like, what are you, why are you fucking with me? And it turns out that Flora May worked for the journalist's family. So that little girl that took the brick was her.
Was Paula.
Paula is Flora May's daughter. The journalist took the brick from Flora.
Oh, yeah.
So she accuses Flora May of sending her the email and the video. And then the daughter, Paula, gets on the phone, and the journalist just keeps going off on Paula, saying, you guys are terrorizing me. What do you want from me? Do you want money? And the daughter is like, you lied to your parents. Even my own mom thought I destroyed the furniture. And she's like, you were jealous. You were scared. You were angry that your parents liked me.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to be special. And the journalist is telling Paula, like, you're sick.
Yeah.
I don't remember what you're talking about. And Paula tells her this is her chance to put things right, to tell the truth. And don't ever call again.
Yeah. And the whole thing with Paula, the reason that she said the journalist hated her as a kid is because the parents liked Flora May, their employee, liked Paula, and actually had had a music scholarship for her.
Right. They were sending her to school.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And journalist girl didn't like it.
No. So journalist girl calls her dad, and he is like, what are you talking about? A video? And then she says that she knows that he stole the brick and she wants the truth. And he's like, we don't need to talk about it. It was just a stupid art thing. This was so long ago. You found it on the property and you thought it was a present. And, Flora May's crazy kid knifed up all the furniture. And the journalist is like, well, how do you know that? And he's like, well, you told us that she did. So she seems kind of confused. And she asks what happened. And he's like, that kid was a nightmare. We called the police when we saw what she'd done. We charged her with property damage. And the journalist is like, she's a kid. What?
He's like, you were terrified of her.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what she told them.
Mm-hmm. So the mom had to pay them back for the furniture. So when the brick came along, it was the only item of value that they had. And so, he says, I didn't know what else to do. You were terrified of that girl. They did something to our heirloom dining room table that couldn't be fixed. And that dining room table is still there in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So the journalist says that she thinks that he got it wrong, that it wasn't Paula. And he's like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So she says, it's not some art thing. It's more than that. And he is like, are you recording right now? Turn it off. Stop this garbage. And he ends the call by saying all families have secrets and they should stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
So then the journalist reaches under the runner on the dining table. Whoop, booped my mic.
What did it do to you?
You know what? That's between me and my mic.
Okay, sure.
Okay? So she moves the runner on the dining table, and that symbol that we saw on the paper, that we saw in the brick scan, is there carved into the wood.
Yes. Big time. Not
Big time.
not like fist size.
Right.
This thing was like, I don't know, 2 feet at least in length.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So, and then she is listening to that recording with her dad and she deletes it.
Very reluctantly.
Yeah.
Hits that button so hard. That click was like,
And then she starts having this like internal pain, like she doubles over, like her kidneys or something. Something's wrong.
mm-hmm.
And this breakdown, she just starts like heaving and choking, and it's very visceral.
Yes.
And she ends up pulling the brick out from inside her throat. Like she starts feeling her throat and she seems shocked. And she reaches her hands in her mouth.
Yeah, the choking becomes, or the gagging becomes choking, like not, but like obstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she pulls it out and it is a brick.
It is.
Just for her.
So then we have her sitting on the floor and she's just staring at this thing covered in goo and a little bit of blood. And I mean, it's a brick. This isn't like a fucking Lego brick that came out of her.
No, this is like a full size, like if you picture a red brick.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of skinnier and longer.
Yeah. But even, yeah. It's not flexible.
No.
So this couldn't have been easy. Then she gets up and leaves the bathroom, kind of like very purposefully. And then we hear that fucking rumbling sound again. She comes back with a hammer and just starts smashing the thing.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit, but she is just fucking pounding away. Then the rumbling stops, and then we see the brick in pieces. And she looks completely crazy.
The soundscaping in this scene is really good.
Yes, it is. But yeah, she looks like she has just reached that point where I've had enough. What the ever-loving fuck is going on? Because I want to shut it off.
I mean, when you pull a brick out of your own body, there's got to be a lot of questions.
There does. And what happens next, I totally get. She just like goes to the kitchen and sits.
Yeah.
Right? When you have that many questions on something like that that's happened, you just can't process it.
Right.
You just fucking need a moment. And then we hear some strange sounds like rocks moving. Coming from the bathroom.
Like clinking and scraping and sloshy almost.
So she goes to look, and I love this so much. I loved it both times, and I'll love it every time I see it. The sounds are unsettling as she gets even closer. So she peeks in, and what she sees is herself standing where the brick pieces were. Now, you have to look close, folks, if you're going to watch this. Or if you watched it, listening to this, you're going to watch it again and didn't notice, pay attention. Look towards the bottom of the screen at her feet. There is a black puddle flowing into her. So you know that whole thing with the liquid, like she's soaking it up. That actually got me. Just because that's the clearest sign in any movie that something is fucking wrong.
Yes.
Right? Not at a she's losing her shit mentally wrong. Because you don't throw that little bit of in there. Because people don't do that in visions. So I'm like, oh, this okay. Then so she sees this, sees herself, sees that thing going, right? There's a couple little sounds. She just slowly turns around and walks away.
Yeah, she's like, nope.
Yep, nope. Nope.
Nope.
This isn't happening. So she gets in the kitchen and she turns on her recorder, turns back around. The imitation is there. Journalist says hello to it. There's no response. Journalist sits on a stool. Imitation, her, sits as well. The journalist sets the recorder on the counter and asks, What are you? Can you understand me? Why are you here? What do you want from me, from us? The imitation, her, picks up the recorder and crushes it. So, while that's going on, same thing. She's slowly walking to that giant glass door and just walks out. Doesn't look back, nothing. And then when she gets outside,
starts running.
Busting ass. Oh, God. So she runs into the woods. And this is like over 100 yards.
It's pretty far.
Because it's a big swath of property. And at the end of it is a river or a creek, whatever that is. Or a lake, maybe. I don't know. So she gets down into the woods towards the lake, whatever. She ends up hiding behind a tree. Sits there for a second, peeks around. There's the imitation. And it's like Jason from Friday the 13th, Part 8. Boo! Ah! You run 60 blocks, stop for a second, and then look back over, and he's fucking there. Even though,
right there.
Yeah, even though we just saw him like walking, like he just woke up. Boom, boom, boom. And then it says the same.
Yeah, it just looks at her and it says same.
And touches her. Then the imitation looks scared. Then they both say in unison, "Are you going to hurt me?" And then they fight. They're wrestling on the ground. As you know, a lot of action stuff going on. And then one of them is getting strangled. And then we cut to one of them, blackened feet from dirt collecting rocks. They're being stuffed into the dead body of whichever one has been killed.
Oh, she's gathering large stones.
Yeah, rocks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, large rocks. Okay, that's fair. And then the body is dragged into the lake, presumably sunk, back at the house. And I just wrote, the winner goes inside.
The winner, whoever.
The winner, making sounds of shock and, just incoherent, just kind of, like the short circuiting is just wild in her brain. And then we hear the voiceover. "I want to tell you a story. You may not believe it. I need to tell it anyway. I have a secret. I'm the only one who can share it, the only one who is willing. And when I tell this story, I will change everything." And then we see that Ian is eating.
Yeah.
He's just like gobbling food up. And then we hear the journalist's voice. "All you have to do is listen." And that's the movie. And I did put in my notes, we did watch the credits. The interviewer's name is the interviewer. And the girl who played her 9-year-old version was young interviewer.
Yes.
So there we go. So that, folks, is the Monolith.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
So, technically, there's a lot of things that are really good about this film. The stylistic color choices, even the choice of the house.
Yes.
Was really good. It was a very excellent set, the one set that they had.
Yes.
The sound quality and just the sound design was very well done. And the acting from both the voice actors and the main actor,
right,
were all done very well.
Yes. I was thinking about the coloring.
Yeah, because it does have it's blue.
Yeah. Well, so when you have a single location, you're kind of tied into, you got to settle on the coloring. You can't have it not be the same throughout. I don't know, the tone, so the coloring kind of like brought me in. made me feel like I was there, which is usually people, you think like warm lighting and,
But
warm coloring.
this was cold lighting.
It was,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I just, I still
But it
felt,
matched the tone
yeah,
of what was going on.
yeah.
You know. Yeah, it was like so in our house all the lighting is pretty yellowy.
Yeah.
And that's intentional because we like that kind of lighting.
Yeah. It's, dim and
Mhm. But this film was very like white light, cold colors. It had a definite feel to it. Even the outside shots had that same cold coloration to them,
mm-hmm.
especially the shot of the monolith over top of the house.
Yes. And so we had discussed this
Mm-hmm.
before we go on with technical stuff. First of all, when you said it, technically it's great. We're not we're not saying the creative part wasn't, or
Right.
it's a good movie.
It is a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Because we've said that sometimes, it's, well, technically it was great, but the rest of it just blew, but we could go like several episodes talking and debating about the imagery and the different things, who won at the end, what that fucking monolith was over the house,
what the bricks were, and what's going to happen to the world now.
But we'll leave that to you guys.
It is left
to discuss with your friends and stuff, because
yeah,
there's just so much good about this. Technically, we want to address.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about the sound.
Go for it.
Because the sound was a big part of what kept me in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything did. This was a really good film overall. But the soundscaping was very unsettling.
Yes.
And it was purposely that way because it's an unsettling film. But, it was building up until that climactic moment where she pulled the brick out of her throat.
Yeah. That was wholly unexpected.
Yeah.
For it to come that way.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I thought in the beginning that box, I'm like, oh, here we go. Nope.
Mm-mm. But that's the thing, isn't it? If, all these other people had gotten a brick in a box on their doorstep, they would say, it showed up in a box on my doorstep.
Yeah. Well, I understood why they're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
It just showed up. Goodbye.
Yeah. It was just there.
Yeah.
Or I don't remember.
I want to compare this to Pontypool, not because of the whole virus by sound thing or word of mouth, which is another whole conversation episode we could have. But so in Pontypool, one location had more than one individual, more than one actor on screen. But the sound was even. Right. Mazzy's voice was very radio, even when he wasn't on the radio.
Right.
And the only reason you knew he was like on the air is because he slowed it down and did his, radio cadence. Right. The sound in this was excellent because when you have all these people in phone calls and video messages and recordings and stuff, there are a lot of tentpole films. I'm talking $100 million and up that have missed the mark on that so much.
That have had such trouble.
It's like everybody who was doing the sound editing got violently ill. So they had to go down the list like to the 517th person who can do sound editing, who wasn't very good at it. Right. It again, it made me feel like I was there. What was interesting is, so, the setup, her podcast setup, she's sitting at a desk through most of the show or most of the movie doing this stuff, looking at her screen. She's got a microphone, but that's interviewing when she's calling people and recording. And when she's like just doing her phone, she'll just get that little handheld recorder, and folks, I paid very close attention to the equipment she was using and the equipment on that desk. And she was using GarageBand, you know, all great stuff.
Yeah.
And like the H4 Zoom mobile recorder broke my heart when the Imitation crushed it. Like $400 fucking piece of equipment. Ouch. But they made all of this sound like you were there. And then they had one quick clip, neither one of us mentioned, when she was recording the podcast. She was actually in a different room, standing up in a corner with the sound tiles like we have.
Right.
Right. So almost like that whole thing, she's doing her whole bit and this and that. But for the actual recording, she's in her own little sound booth. But
Yes.
being it's her parents' house, she had to kind of make do, which we know a lot of podcasters record in their closets. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's a solo cast. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Right? Clothes and everything there. You have a ready-made sound booth.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved, I don't know, I just felt engaged. I think not just the sound, I think the pacing of it and go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the pacing of it with the writing of she's an investigative journalist. And she's in this one place. She's got to do it all remotely. And I think it was just done so very well because, again, I felt like I was right there. Like she called me up and said, come over and watch me do my shit. And just went about the day. You know, I felt like I just really was engaged with what she was doing.
I think when you do a single person story, right? Because this was all about her, 100%. When you do a single person stories, it feels like a much more intimate picture of someone.
Yes.
When they're alone in their house, you know, it's intimate. And there's something that just, you don't get that same feel with multi-person
You
films.
You don't. And it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's really tough.
I mean, yeah, there were other voices involved and she was on the phone with people. But yeah, with it just her, we've seen a lot of stuff. And there's a whole like section of horror movies in the last couple of years, especially again because of the pandemic, and they just kept doing it, where they realized, man, it is really inexpensive to write a script about one person in one place.
Yeah.
And it has not gone very well. You know what I mean? It wasn't engaging. Well, you can't say the acting wasn't great in this film or that film. The writing wasn't good enough to support it, I'll say.
Sure.
Because when we did, Truth in Stone it's a short story or short film, we discussed the handicap of this whole thing before we even put the first word down was it's going to take two banging actors to pull this off. It's two people, one location, sitting, talking to each other. We talked about it before. We talked about Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a bunch of people, but that fucking movie is nothing but talking, nothing but monologues.
Right.
Right. And they did it. This film did it. I wanted to see her on the screen.
Yeah.
It wasn't like in some instances where it's like, oh, well, it's going to be that only person because it's a one person thing.
Right.
But we've seen ones where it's like, oh no, couldn't we do like a montage of something else? Because
even like the movie Castaway, if you think about that, we're dating ourselves, but which is a phenomenal movie. There is a lull about halfway through that film where I'm just like, okay, I get it. He's alone. He's on an island. We need something other than him slowly going crazy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You feel like you need a break, but it's not like that in this film.
No. Aside from the fact that the story itself is on its own, even
Hmm.
if it had been multiple people, different kind of settings and stuff, I was engaged by the story. I thought this was an excellent concept. It made no sense reading about it,
Right.
right? On the channel description.
Yeah, that's the trouble with the log line. As we read it, and we were like, "What?"
But the preview looked the trailer
Yeah,
looked awesome.
it looked very scary.
Yeah. And I I think why I enjoyed this so much is it because it is billed as a horror.
Hmm.
It is a single person thing, but we're missing the bad guy.
Yeah.
We've seen several that one several of them where it's a woman, she's a writer, and she ends up in some fucking cabin or her family's cabin or her cabin out in the middle of the boondocks like us,
And then someone's
right?
hunting her or
Someone's
something.
hunting her or terrifying her. One film will mix it up over the other, where in one of them she was deaf,
Right.
right? So all the shit was happening, stomping around, and she was oblivious. And then in another movie she was blind, and then in another movie she was neither.
Right.
But it was just all creepy. And then of course there's no phones and this and that and stuff.
Yeah, I think I saw one time even where it was like single woman. She just bought this house and moved somewhere, and there was, I don't know if we watched it together. It was like there was like a ghost, and then she ended up banging the ghost.
Yes, we did watch it together.
Did we?
Yeah, because I gave one of my famous "What the Ever Loving Fuck Have We Gotten Into?" but um, but all those movies, I didn't feel the tension,
Right.
right? Of like I did here, and there was no bad guy. There was no, even though I brought up Jason, there was no, you know, it just, I don't know. It was
I mean, yeah. Toward the end, they had the duplicate, which was the bad guy, kind of. But
right,
at the same time, it was almost like it was just doing what it was supposed to do.
right. But I loved how, I guess this is the other thing too. It's like writing a mystery. So
Hmm.
this is a horror thriller, I would say,
Yeah.
right? Because it is kind of like, what the fuck are these people talking about? They're dropping all these little things, and they're all different,
Yeah.
right? There's like a commonality to the people she's talked to, like they hang up on her, you know.
Right.
But
They only want to talk up to a certain point.
right, um, but all the shit they were talking about, I love how what we saw
Hmm.
with the imitation her, it brought so many threads into one giant knot,
It did.
you know. And then, like I said, we could talk about this more and more. We're gonna leave it for the air. Um, what in the hell? I mean, she asked the appropriate questions.
Yeah.
What are you? Is it an alien thing? Is it like some sort
She's a
of,
good interviewer.
yeah? Is it some Aztec kind of thing? I mean, what the fuck is this brick and this weird shit? And why do people get sick? And this has been around for a long time,
Hmm.
at least, from the '60s on, because the art collector was old,
Right.
the dealer or whatever the hell he was. Um, and that they did this in the '80s, this
Hmm.
big study of this weird illness.
Phenomenon.
Yeah, the phenomenon. Um, so, yeah, what is going on? And I do want to, try and suss it out and figure it out and kind of, do some things. But more importantly, I didn't care
Right.
about that part.
Just wanted to know what was going to happen next.
Yes, we're here now.
Yeah.
What's now? What is going on now? And yeah, what's going to happen next? And then when we
Right.
get to next, we're like,
Ah!
where could you go from here? What's that was weird,
Hmm.
it's weird to say, but it was fun
It was fun.
to watch. It was engaging. It made me think, made me ask questions,
Yeah.
in my head, like, what's going on? What was that? The whole thing with the door. So when she goes to the door in this giant window wall,
Hmm.
there is where it ends. So if you think of like right and left, so on the left side is where the whole wall opens a bit, so you can go outside,
Mm-hmm.
and then right there's a wall going
Yes.
out. It's the outside of the house. That part goes out. So when she's looking at that box and they're showing the sidewalk down to the corner of
Mm-hmm.
the wall, both times, even though I saw it, the second time I was still everything inside me was horror movie ready
I know.
for something to come around that fucking corner. And
Somebody to jump out.
is it going to be like just a quick flash of something like in signals signs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whoa, didn't expect that, but there
Right?
was nothing.
No. Which is
Yeah.
almost creepier in a way.
Yeah. And I like the little things. Like, why did the turtle not eat up until the end?
Right.
You know, what
Was the turtle sick?
was the turtle sick, or is it like vibes?
Right.
Did this have to happen to make her her? But then we have the guy whose dad is different and very um Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Right.
right? There's just something wrong with him. There's just something wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
He's different.
yeah, he's different. And I thought, is that what it is? And then when we saw the imitation, I'm like, ooh, very much Body Snatchers, but it's different.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of movies about
Right.
replacing and replicating, and whether they use them as batteries or stick them in a bubbly tank down in the basement or
Right.
for some reason. Um,
I mean, this was also just sort of a very novel idea,
yeah,
concept, execution, because it was executed almost in like a true crime drama unfolding in real time
yes,
sort of way.
yeah.
Because she was doing a podcast that was basically like true crime, but,
I, you know
unexplained.
what? If I had to explain it to somebody, I would say it's a horror movie like Only Murders in the Building without the comedy,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It's a slow unfold,
Mm-hmm.
only you don't have multiple episodes to
Slow
get through it.
puzzle.
Yeah. Um, and you really, when she starts like getting the circles
Mm-hmm.
and everything, you kind of know, okay, they talked about it. This
Like
is
she's
what's
getting the
happening.
signs.
Yeah. Um, I think what my biggest question
Mm-hmm.
is, um, she stole the brick
Yeah.
from, so, I had, and this is another big conversation point. What do all those fucking bricks mean in that guy's basement? I mean, what is, are they just going to sit dormant forever? Is that what, like the bad thing that happened is Paula, her brick was taken?
Right.
So all this bad shit happens? Is this thing like a purification? But why do you need a duplicate who's handily all for killing you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, well, if that was it, then why is the guy like, my dad's different? You know,
Mm-hmm.
very cool. I mean, this is a conversation thing, and I like that. It has been a long time since something has tickled my brain.
The conversational parts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like a lot of it, I honestly I don't really care because I enjoyed the time I sat in front of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any downfall to this. I don't have any critiques.
Yeah. No. No notes.
I will say for over $500,000 budget, used it wisely.
Yeah.
I mean, everything worked, right? They didn't. You can because we've seen some that are high budget.
Well, that's the other thing. This isn't like one of those, made on a $500. It looks it.
Yeah,
This is made on a high budget, and it looks it.
right. And we've seen ones that don't, and we've seen ones
Mm-hmm.
where like, oh, I see where most of the money went,
I mean,
and it
like
wasn't.
Frankenhooker, most of the money went to that hooker scene.
Yeah, but worth it,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah. This is one to watch. This is one to look at closely,
Mm-hmm.
and um, for folks who are looking for inspiration, this is another one. This is the high mark. This is what you
Yeah.
want to achieve.
Yeah.
From writing to getting it produced, what to expect from the people involved. The camera work was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get weird and funky with it.
No.
Um, Everything felt natural and flowing. And this is a big thing. People, might not realize this. I I get very agitated when I lose my compass in a movie.
Sure.
So they exit the screen to the right, right? The next scene, but they better be coming in from the fucking left.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because you've shown me the layout of the place that they're at or whatever. I hate it when they swap it and it's like mirror reversed and it's different. Where even is this? This was very fluid and true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like they just put a camera down, right? Because that's
No.
another thing with indie film. We're going to shoot the scene. The camera's going to be here. That's it, folks. Because we don't have room to put it somewhere else, right? Or this wall is like the one thing we want to show because the rest of this place that we rented out looks like shit. We just can't afford to do anything with it. Um, it flowed with multi angles. Everything was tonally, positionally correct,
Mm-hmm.
and the movements it just worked. It just worked.
Yeah. I mean, so like biggest lessons coming out of this movie,
Mm-hmm.
I think would be uh looking at the technical details and the soundscaping and how that specifically worked with the story,
Right.
right? Tying it all together and nailing it.
Yeah. Because the script tells the story.
Yeah.
Right. Script is a weird ass looking book,
Mm-hmm.
but you read a script, you get the story. The art of movies is telling the story without relying on the script
Right.
visually.
Yeah.
And this does it. It brings,
Telling it through the shots, through the sound, through the
yeah.
color, through the, the quiet shots where nothing is happening.
And excellent acting,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough gig.
And the only
Being the
actor
only one.
carrying the boat.
And I'm curious, and I didn't bother to look it up because I'm curious, but I don't need to know. Did they do so like with Star Wars, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, when she had to do her scenes because they had that like dream scene,
Mm-hmm.
right? He flew across the country to sit in front of her while they filmed her so she could talk to him,
That's nice.
right? And I was wondering, this is done so well with these phone conversations. Um, did they have them
Yeah, I don't
there?
know.
Because I don't know. We've seen some places, some productions that have done it live, where the phone
Mm-hmm.
is wired right into the sound, and they're going to just do it live, do the conversation
Right.
in the shot. I don't know. It was done that well, where I have to ask, did they do anything special to make it more tonally fitting?
Yeah.
Both sides of it, you know. Um, Location. I can't give them a thumbs up for the location because, it's great,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like any other one. Did
Oh,
they
they
find it?
found a
Did,
great
did
location.
they find it and rent it,
Right.
or is it like somebody's friend kind of thing? Because I don't want to put down like that's the benchmark. You know, you find what you can find and you do the best you can with it. They had this massive sprawling house,
Mm-hmm.
which opened them up to a ton of options for
Oh, yeah.
shooting. Folks, don't get discouraged that you have that tiny room and you can only have the one camera showing pointed against that one wall. Otherwise, none of it will work. Bang it out.
Yeah.
Make it work, right? Maybe a little bit down the road, you'll get this giant ass house or something similar to it where you can just run rampant with camera setups. And I do admire the location because with those windows, because there are some night shots,
That had to be hard.
right? Yeah, angling everything so none of the production showed up in the window had to have not been easy. And when you see the height of these, and this house is one of those that's like poured concrete.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That is a fucking nightmare of echoes. And how they kept it soft or absent
Mm-hmm.
is wonderful. You know, that's good work.
It is.
Good work. Yeah. Sound, lighting, camera,
Writing.
writing, acting.
Yeah, I mean, another lesson could be don't be afraid of an original concept. Because I've
Yeah.
never seen anything really like this before.
This is, I mean, I can think of a lot of similar things. So
Sure.
if you follow the trail, all right, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is certainly a motivation behind this. So it's sort of a
Mm-hmm.
pseudo sci-fi horror, right? I'm going to just call it horror thriller. I don't want to call it sci-fi because there's nothing sciencey about it.
Right.
It's weird.
Just because it may be aliens.
Yeah, it's horror level weird stuff. And you just don't need, you know, it's not a slasher. It's
No.
not any of that. Uh, it is just so unique, the
Mm-hmm.
approach to it, you know, and I can see where a studio wouldn't greenlight this.
It's a high concept.
Yeah. And that's the problem with Hollywood, I guess, is we're not doing high concept stuff anymore because it's not a guaranteed moneymaker,
Right.
you know.
Except for Severance, which is great.
Severance is high concept, but it's it it has beneath that the writing,
Right.
right? So you take the concept away, you have obviously these fucking magnificent actors
Oh my
all throughout,
gosh.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but all of the stuff, concept aside, works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because obviously it's big budget thing. Um, I would, yeah, I would say this movie is going to be in one of my. I don't know what number yet.
Right. It's top something.
It's in the top something because I look forward to watching this again.
Oh, yeah. I would
Just
definitely
like
watch this again.
We're chilling. We don't want to get into anything hard and heavy
Mm-hmm.
or watch something like Taboo. Folks, if you haven't seen Taboo, it's only one season. It got canceled in 2017.
Tom Hardy.
Oh, see it because it is fucking magnificent.
It's really good.
At least this movie we know ends properly.
Right.
Taboo is a series, but yeah. This is what another one. Yes, it's a $500,000 budget. Don't look at the polish, right? That money can buy you and all your stuff, but look at the technical stuff because whether it's $500,000 or $100, skill is skill.
Yeah. I mean, look at the intention because this movie was done with a lot of intention.
Yes. Yes. And look for the Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look how this thing comes together.
Mm-hmm.
So very happy that we found this.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is an IFC one, I believe. I'm pretty sure because I think I was flipping through there the other night looking for something after you went to bed.
Okay.
I think it came up. But anyway.
Well, with
that,
check out our website, lordsofmisrealproductions.com.
everything's there. Do all the stuff. Blah, blah, blah.